Hello everyone, Anne here, the little Frenchie in Big Texas. Welcome to my channel. So today I want to talk to you about the events happening back home in France, because I've seen quite a few channels mentioning it, sometimes a bit pulling things a bit too much, far from the reality, and I had questions as well. So I want to explain to you what's happening. And first, putting it into context, because yes, there have been strikes. Yes, there have been people on the street for several weeks marching in Paris, in the main cities. And the strikes, it's a transportation system, but it's also the trash management in Paris that's piling up for now. It's pretty much a lot of functions, jobs, people are on strike and protesting. True. But what you need to know is that for France, it's a national sport, literally a national sport. Every time people do not agree with what's happening in the government, the proposals, it can be anything. I remember when I was a kid, it was the education, reform of the education system. People were on the street, so every time they go on the street, that's freedom of expression, of speech. They go and they march. So most of the time, it's given places in Paris where they go to, and it's usually peaceful. Let's be honest, but lately, in the last few years, you've had some people that are using this march, peaceful march, and added violence and rioting and destroying some shops and places. So it became something else, but that's not the main purpose. And the same is happening here. Initially, it's a peaceful walk, people protesting, saying, no, we're not in agreement with what you're proposing. Except that tonight it's going a bit further, and it's becoming more violent. And in another place, which is not the main boulevards in Paris, it's very close to Parliament. And let me first explain to you why, how did it all started, and why is it in front of Parliament tonight? So let me share a screen as well with you. But it's all about retirement. To make it short, it's about retirement. Right now, France is one of the countries that has one of the lowest retirement age in Europe. So as you see here, France's Macron risks his government to raise retirement age. And you see people marching. So, that doesn't look too bad. They're just marching. Actually, a few still have masks over there. And you see the Eiffel Tower in the background. Okay. So it's all about increasing retirement age. And in France, you have quite a few people, depending on their job, that have some privileges. Like, for instance, if you work in the subway system and you work in the dark, or if you the train, you can retire very early. Way before 60. But the normal retirement age is more closer to 60, 62. But with the baby boom generation coming to retirement and so on, less kids, it's hard to sustain. It's just hard to sustain. People live longer, and the French state can no longer afford to give retirement, social security, government pension, however you want to call it, to all people up to 80, 90 years old if they start at 62. So they're trying to increase the retirement age to 64, adding 2 years. And that is regardless of your age, except if you're that close to retirement and then it's phased out. But if you're 50 and maybe 12 years for retirement, it means you're no longer 12 years, you're 14 years from retirement, which might not seem that much if you're 20, just starting to work, or 25. But if you're 50, 55, it does mean a lot working 2 more years. So in general, here you see some younger people, that's actually students, and they're saying, we are on strike to block it all. That's a translation. See? Students shout slogans during a demonstration against the government's plan to raise the retirement age to 64 in Paris, Thursday, March 16, which is today. So what's the process here? What the president has tried to do, and that, we've had talked about raising retirement age for ages. So it's not just Macron, but nobody actually went through it. But here, I believe we're very close to the the wall, not being able to sustain it. That simple. So how it works, we have 2 assemblies in France, Parliament, the equivalent of the US Congress, and the Senate. So the bill first goes to Parliament, then is going to Senate, and then going back to the Parliament to be finally voted. So the bill actually went to Parliament and then to the Senate, and it went back to Parliament. And here it is not getting voted. So we are at that stage. So what does Macron do here? He's using his special constitutional power. See, French President Emmanuel Macron imposed a highly unpopular bill raising the retirement age from 62 to 64 on Thursday by shunning Parliament and invoking a special constitutional power, which is pretty much an executive order, which in French is called 49.3, 49.3, which is just voting it and making it become a law. And that is extremely unpopular. So people tonight, they are on the street, pretty close to Parliament, not in the usual place, and they're rioting rather violently. So the police is there. You're probably going to see some shocking images on TV, my guess, because they're very unhappy because the government is bypassing the legislative system pretty much. Macron is bypassing to vote it. And they're looking at a way, when I said that, is the lawmakers looking at a way to counter his bill, but they have to act extremely quickly. They have 24 to 48 hours to do it. And there are two ways I think they can vote, which is called motion de censure, which is a censorship vote in Parliament, but they need a very large majority. I'm not sure they're going to get it. And the second way is to try to have a referendum, meaning a national vote on the law. But here again, there are ways to do it, and I'm not sure they're going to have time to make it. Because once Macron signed, which he did, the executive order, it is going to a special instance, which is kind of the US Supreme Court, but not exactly. It's called the Conseil Constitutionnel, which is pretty much the wisest people in the nation, the wisest lawmaker, kind of like the Supreme Court, that have to review it and approve it. And then it's voted into law, pretty much. So they usually do it pretty quickly. So 2-3 days. We are Thursday. They're probably not going to work this weekend, but it's happening quick. So people are rioting right now on the streets. See crowds gathered and riot police vans zoomed by outside the National Assembly. And that's a very nice area in Paris. Very, very nice, close to the American University. It's not the usual place where people go to protest. See, the proposed pension changes have prompted major strikes and protests across the country. Since January, when he started, Macron made it the flagship of his second term, argued the reform is needed to keep the pension system from diving into deficit as France's population ages and life expectancy lengthens. So that's, you would need to do a full audit on the government budget to know whether this is true and whether we waste money on other topics, which is very possible, and I'm not going to name some, but you all know what the topic of the moment is. It's the same in the US. But right now he's using his special powers during a cabinet meeting at the Élysée Presidential Palace just a few minutes before the scheduled vote in France's lower house of parliament, because he had no guarantee of a majority, which is a big failure as well when you look at it from the prime minister point of view. So people are asking for her resignation. Kind of like what happened in the UK not that long ago. See, and it's a lady as well. Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne then tried to formally announce the decision at the National Assembly, where leftist members broke into the French national anthem to delay her speech. That would have been a good one on camera. The speaker had to briefly suspend the session to restore order. I'll let you imagine that. But I saw some of the pictures where they had a sign saying no to retirement at 64. I mean, all the leftists had it. So Macron is not necessarily rightist as such. He's kind of center, but they're against him. So that is where we stand. That's an illustration of the rubbish piles on Paris streets as strike continues. Yes, and it's not going to stop anytime soon, given he's forcing it. And the extreme far right is also going to try to file a no confidence motion. So that is the censorship, is no confidence motion. But I don't know if they're going to have enough votes to make it. So here you go. Some news from abroad. I just wanted to put some perspective here because I've seen some videos on other YouTube channels that were really distorting it from the truth. So you have to put it back, into the perspective, the French way of marching on the street, which has happened for years. And when I say years, I was a kid. So I know I'm very young, but still, it's been quite a few decades here. So it's just here becoming a bit more violent, but just tonight. And as always, you always have people that use protest people on the street to their own advantage. And yes, that happens everywhere. So we'll see what will happen, but at least now you understand why and what's going on in France. So I would advise you, if you listen to any of these other YouTube channels, and some of them are telling some very good things, but as always, read as well and do your own research. Like my old people on the couch, 2 old people on the couch friends, Mark and Debbie say, do your own research and be prepared. Which is exactly why I'm doing this video here, to give you some perspective. And this is just my perspective. I'm not in France. This is what I can read in the newspapers right now and what my parents are telling me, but I'm not there. So even then, it's a biased kind of perspective. So do your own research. So guys, I hope you found this useful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. I try to cover the news as I see fit, depending on the feedback I receive and how I see the information being used. So thank you all for watching. Here's the headline today, March 16, from Le Figaro, one of the main French newspapers, and the picture speaks for itself. That is right there on the other side of the river from the National Assembly, l'Assemblée Nationale, and it's actually where the American Embassy is located. So nothing to do with the American Embassy in this case, it just happens to be there. But it's a very nice area in Paris, so the police force went to get rid of all the people rioting there, and the picture spoke for itself here. I give you a tiny bit more time if you want to go through this article here in English coming up. Thank you all for watching, guys.